Namaskar and welcome to India This Week.
Our top story this week is a focus on Indo-South Africa relations, which got a major boost with the high-profile visit of South African President Mr. Nelson Mandela, who was the chief guest in the country's Republic Day celebrations.
The fact that India has been one of the first and most severe opponents of the policy of apartheid, and that the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, first practiced his philosophy of non-violence in South Africa, gives the ties between the two countries a special significance. India This Week brings to you an exclusive report on the visit of Mr. Mandela to India.
But first, the other headlines of the week.
Traditional fanfare and cultural pageantry marked the celebration of India's 46th Republic Day on the 26th of January. On this occasion, the best of Indian military prowess and cultural diversity were on show. The Republic Day parade started after the President, Dr. Shankar Dayal Sharma, accompanied by South Africa's President, Dr. Nelson Mandela, arrived at New Delhi's Rajpath. It is on the Republic Day that the country's armed forces ceremonially salute their Supreme Commander, the President of India.
The Congress High leadership served a notice last Friday on the former Union Minister for Human Resource Development, Mr. Arjun Singh, to explain within 4 days as to why action should not be taken against him for breaching the party's discipline. Earlier, he was suspended from the primary membership of the Congress by the party president, Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao. The decision about the suspension was announced by the Congress General Secretary, Mr. Janardhan Pujari, at a news conference at the party headquarters in New Delhi on the 24th of January. Mr. Pujari said that the suspension followed what he called Mr. Singh's anti-party activities, resulting in damage to the party's interests and image. The party president had also referred the matter to the 6-member Congress Disciplinary Action Committee, which served the show-cause notice on him. The suspension divests Mr. Arjun Singh of his position in the party's apex organ, the Congress Working Committee. Mr. Arjun Singh had resigned as a union minister on the 24th of last month and had demanded reorientation of the party's policies and elimination of the corrupt elements from the party and the government. Political commentators discern that by suspending Mr. Singh and paving the way for his expulsion, the Congress president has signalled to the dissidents within the party that activities detrimental to the party's interests, image and discipline would no longer be tolerated. The action against Mr. Arjun Singh has been welcomed by most of the senior leaders of the Congress.
Republic Day celebrations were marred in Jammu when 3 bombs went off close to the podium from where the Jammu and Kashmir Governor, General K.V. Krishna Rao, was addressing the people. The blasts occurred one after another and killed 8 people, including 2 soldiers and 2 policemen. General Rao, however, escaped unhurt. The Central Bureau of Investigation has been asked to probe the incident.
Anti-apartheid campaigner Archbishop the Reverend Trevor Huddleston of South Africa was presented with the Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace, Disarmament and Development for the year 1994 at New Delhi last Friday. The President, Dr. S.D. Sharma, presented the award at a colourful ceremony at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. The President of South Africa, Dr. Nelson Mandela, the Indian Vice President, Dr. K.R. Narayanan and the Prime Minister, Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao, were among those who attended the function. The South African President, Dr. Nelson Mandela's state visit to India as the chief guest at this year's Republic Day festivities pointed to the greater potential of the bilateral relations between the two countries, and the agreements to concretize mutual ties only reinforced the high regard the South African hero enjoys in India. These also reflected the acknowledgement of it.
Visit, I should put it in this manner, is the coping stone of the final stage where a new kind of freedom and equal relationship among Asian and African people can take place on a friendly basis without any interference from any other power, other race.
Dr. Mandela's admission that it was Mahatma Gandhi's struggle against such discrimination in South Africa itself that inspired the South African leader to strive for justice throughout his imprisonment for over 26 years endeared him all the more to the Indians.
On behalf of the people of South Africa, I've come on this occasion to say to Rajiv, Pandit and Mahatma, indebted to your freedom can now reach its zenith because the people of South Africa are at last free.
As South Africa passes through the transition from the bygone apartheid dispensation to a democratic and multiracial state, there is considerable scope for increased political and economic ties between India and South Africa. And the bilateral agreement to promote political and economic relations, including a treaty on the principles of interstate relations and cooperation, signed by President Mandela and the Prime Minister Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao on the 25th of this month, underscored this reality. The treaty affirms the two countries' commitment to peace, democracy and secular governance, their shared resolve to fight against racial discrimination and religious fundamentalism, as well as their endeavours to achieve a world free from nuclear weapons and violence.
There is much that favors cooperation between India and South Africa. There is an enormous fund of goodwill based on our linked histories of struggle for freedom, a shared commitment to democracy, and affinity of culture and traditions. Such cooperation between South Africa and India will also be eased by the cultural links rooted in the presence in South Africa of 1 million people of Indian origin. Thank you very much.
The two countries also agreed to set up a joint commission to promote close cooperation in the political, trade, economic, cultural, scientific and technological spheres. The two Indian Ocean Rim countries also discussed the prospects of establishment of an organization of the Indian Ocean Rim states. Experts point out the complementarities in South Africa's reconstruction program and India's economic liberalization. While the substantial presence of the people of Indian origin there already ensures a market for traditional Indian exports such as handicrafts and fabrics, the need for education and training of the black South Africans and employment-intensive industries may highlight the common grounds between the two countries.
What we had invested in South Africa in terms of moral support and also some material support in the freedom struggle will eventually bring some rewards when people realize that those white countries outside are not as reliable nor as competitive in providing the goods and services which India can supply much more competitively if they turn to India.
It is not without significance that the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry hosted a special reception for Dr. Mandela. South Africa is the gateway to the sub-Saharan Africa and itself has a market of over $15 billion. With the resumption of trade ties since 1993, Indian exports to South Africa were worth 190 crore rupees or over $63 million, while goods worth 90 crore rupees or $30 million were imported from South Africa. Clearly, there is scope for more economic cooperation. Both India and South Africa seek permanent seats in the United Nations Security Council and generally have a complementarity of perceptions and interests about regional and international matters. Standing at the thresholds, obviously, there is still more scope for closer all-round relations between the two. The present phase is just the beginning.
The visit of Mr. Mandela consolidating Indo-South African ties. You are watching India This Week. Later in the program, a profile of Ben Kingsley, the man who won an Oscar for his role in Gandhi, who was in India recently for the 26th International Film Festival. The turmoil in the Indian stock exchanges, coming close on the heel of reports of the collapse of the Mexican economy, has alarm bells ringing in many quarters, with some analysts warning that if it is not careful, India might also go the Mexican way. But there is another school of thought which dismisses this as an alarmist theory, primarily because the fundamentals of the Indian economy are very different and certainly more sound than Mexico's. India This Week gives you an exclusive analysis on the implications of the foreign investments in the Indian economy. But before that, the other business headlines of the week.
The presentation of the Union and Railway budgets this year has been postponed till the third week of March, and the Parliament's budget session will begin on February 13. This has been done because of the MPs' preoccupation with the February-March elections in the 6 state assemblies.
In a series of sweeping changes, the government cleared the decks for the writing and trading of options in the stock markets and substantially strengthened the regulatory powers of the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, over capital market intermediaries and companies.
The Indo-Korean joint venture DCM Daewoo unveiled its new 1500cc passenger car Cielo at an exclusive preview in the capital this week. Cielo, which was launched in Korea last year by the Daewoo Corporation, will hit the Indian roads in the middle of this year. DCM Daewoo plans to produce 60,000 vehicles in the first year itself, with a target of 150,000 vehicles by the year 2000. Cielo is the first car in India with features like multiple-point fuel injection system, automatic gear transmission and emission levels conforming to European standards.
US corporate giant General Electric Company's Chief Executive Officer and Chairman, Mr. John Welch, was on a short visit this week to India to assess new business opportunities in the country. Among his engagements included a luncheon meeting in the capital hosted by the Confederation of Indian Industry. Welch was optimistic about the pace of Indian economic reforms and his company's future interests in the country.
We're already growing in appliances, lighting, power, finance, plastics, medical. So we're well launched in a lot of very good activities, and we're very happy with our partners and very happy with our opportunity.
It was a week which saw India's tryst with economic globalization suffering its first perceptible bout of fits and nerves, with the share market barometer taking a precipitous plunge below psychological resistance levels. Battered by the bears, the BSE sensitive index came crashing down on Monday by nearly 117 points from last week's closing of 3,600.53 points to 3,483.83 points. Tuesday saw the index fall another 72.89 points to close at a new 52-week low of 3,411.04 points. Observers are still unsure what triggered off the downslide. Many brokers, however, feel that the tremors seem to have begun when foreign institutional investors, reeling from a slump in the Mexican stock market and devaluation of the country's currency, tried to make up their losses by offloading a good chunk of blue-chip shares in the Indian bourse.
Because of the Mexico problem, these people were having some kind of a doubt whether they should put the money in the emerging markets. They lost a lot of money over there. The peso got revalued by about 40%. And that really took the wind out of the emerging markets. So they had to step back and relook their strategy, whether they wanted to put money into emerging markets or not.
Depressing sentiments further was the grim warning held out to India by the World Bank officials against its rising foreign debt, which stands at a new high of $92 billion, and also to the spectre of political instability looming in the horizon. Government authorities disagree.
I think that the type of political instability or changes in a democratic system, it is not unusual. Democratic system underlines that there is strong possibility of changes, but it is not necessary that with the change of the rulers or with the change of the government, there should be change of the policies.
As the Sensex climbed back nearly 95 points by Friday, most brokers and finance companies are confident that the Sensex will recover in the near future.
I don't see a major plunge in the future. In fact, I think though there may be still some downward corrections, the market should be more or less stable for the couple of months going forward. And on the fundamental side, I think we should see an improvement in the market. In fact, after the April results, March results are declared in April. A lot will depend, of course, on the budget and on the assembly election results in March. But fundamentally, I think the market should be strong towards April, May.
Analysts are optimistic that foreign investment institutions and companies will not dump Indian scrips following their jettisoning act in the aftermath of the Mexican economic disaster. The reasons are clear. For although both India and Mexico have run up phenomenal debts, the similarity in economic fundamentals ends here. 1. India's foreign exchange levels at nearly $20 billion are extremely comfortable compared to Mexico's dwindling reserves of $5 billion. Secondly, India can boast of a better debt servicing ratio and a narrower import-export trade gap than Mexico. But observers feel that the Mexican crisis still has important lessons for India to learn from in its present path of economic and financial reforms. For one, its capital markets must become more transparent.
We must have a slow process of empowering a transparent, autonomous regulatory system, and that is the key lesson from Mexico, the third one, that they did not have such a mechanism ready in place, its sensitivity, and we must have such a position ready in the future. Otherwise, there could be a danger.
Secondly, though foreign capital inflows bring technology, cheaper funds and linkages with the global markets, imprudent utilization could turn into outflows of hot money, resulting in strong repercussions on developing stock markets, such as that of India. Short-term credit, experts say, will have to be avoided.
One of the things which we should avoid, and actually we are avoiding, is the short-term borrowing. And we shall have to see that we should not create a situation where our payment obligations should be clubbed or bunched together. And the decision of Finance Minister to prepone the payment, certain payments to IMF, is in that direction.
Observers also caution that full convertibility of the rupee should be a gradual process, and when the rupee does become fully convertible as the Mexican peso, fund managers in India should take care to ensure that short-term portfolio flows do not cause wild swings in the exchange rate, which increases uncertainty and adversely impacts exports. The writing on the wall is clear. Globalization of markets has its inevitable domino effects. And though India has no other option than to join the stream, it must learn to protect itself from the harsh and merciless strategies of international investors.
The Indian economy, sound fundamentals, but the uncertainties still remain. Ben Kingsley became a household name in India and much of the rest of the world for his brilliant performance as Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi in Richard Attenborough's critically acclaimed film, Gandhi. Kingsley won an Oscar in his role for the film. He was in Delhi recently after participating in the 26th International Film Festival in Bombay, where two of his films were screened, Schindler's List, directed by Steven Spielberg, and Death and the Maiden, directed by Roman Polanski. India This Week takes pride in bringing you a special profile of Ben Kingsley. But first, the other headlines of the week.
Animal lovers and art buffs were treated to a fascinating display of over 100 works of the best Indian painters at the capital's Taj Palace Hotel. The exquisite art show with animals as its theme was organized as a fundraising effort. The People for Animals, a voluntary animal rights and welfare trust, plans to build a 65-acre shelter to house sick and stray cows in Delhi by the funds raised.
A unique exhibition at Delhi's Gallery Espace, which showcased color pencil drawings by renowned artists Manjeet Bawa of India and Parvansh Etemadi of Iran, came to a close on January 28. The drawings, a rare collaborative attempt in the contemporary Indian art world, highlight the compositional link of Bawa's sensuous delicacy of line and contour and the meticulous drapery of Etemadi. The works convey the idea that beyond the facade of the mundane, there is a deeper reality of human existence which is not experienced by the common man in his daily struggle for survival.
Audio major Polygram made a bow into the Indian music market with a grand function that included the international audio release of the much-awaited film Bombay.
Ben Kingsley was in the country for the screening of Schindler's List, the closing film at the 26th International Film Festival of India.
This is going wide in Hindi in the form that you will see it tonight, and I'm very, very proud and happy to announce that with you tonight. Steven Spielberg is not here. He can't be here, unfortunately, but through me, he sends his most affectionate greetings. I would like to just quote what Steven said when I was at a screening with him in the United States of America. He very simply said to his audience, after you've seen this film, if you're with loved ones, go home with them quietly. And if you're not with loved ones, go and find them and sit with them quietly. You see, if you are curious and you are alert, and you are filming in Poland for 3.5 months, with a genius like Spielberg, who recreates to the minutest detail the Holocaust, there is in fact, as soon as you arrive, no further need for preparation. Because every single day, the information that the actor requires, if he is alert and curious, is coming in huge waves. Day by day, to witness and reenact that systematic massacre was very disturbing indeed. There were, as I say, mornings when I arrived in a state of acute anger and rage. I think probably the energy that drove my performance, as well as the friendship and the comradeship of Stephen and my fellow actors, I think that the main thrust of my work during Schindler's List was rage and indignation. And then, of course, when the rage in me subsided, perhaps towards the end of the day, what took the place of rage was a grief that I had never experienced before in my life.
From the little-known actor chosen to play the role of Gandhi, Ben Kingsley has come a long way. And in portraying a wide range of roles, he has displayed a virtuosity that has won him both critical and popular acclaim. Ben, however, admits that it was his grounding as a Shakespearean actor in Britain that stood him in good stead in his future endeavours.
I began my film career, the major section of my film career, with a film called Gandhi, and I had the title role in that film. But I was able to absolutely, unquestionably, I was able to draw upon my experience as a Shakespeare actor and to have some kind of a grasp of the man caught on the epic landscape of history. And certainly my work in Schindler's List and my work in other films has been very much sustained, I think, by my work with. And Steven Spielberg is a dreadful actor, and he admits this himself. So Spielberg has no idea what actors can or can't do. Attenborough does, he knows their limits. Polanski does, he knows their limits. Spielberg doesn't know. Spielberg thinks that actors can do anything, and therefore you do anything, because he doesn't know where to ask them to stop. This is not a bad thing, this is very exciting, but because he's not an actor, he can't actually experience when you have actually reached a limit and can't perhaps do any more, then he will ask you to do some more. In that sense, he's tough.
Ben Kingsley, the consummate actor of Indian origin, displaying a rare ability and skill on stage and on the big screen. An actor full of promise, seeking greater and more challenging roles in the future.
The portrait of Ben Kingsley, actor par excellence. That is all we have for you this week.
From all of us in the India This Week team, thank you and namaskar.
Namaskar.